Now, if you're a regular viewer of RFL, you know we like to pull back the curtain on what the often surrounding politics and the inside scoop from the people who lived it, especially around our state capitals and our region, and that certainly includes our next guest. Jerry Kremer represented the South Shore of Nassau County in the New York State Assembly for 23 years, running the powerful Ways and Means Committee for a dozen, the only Long Islander ever to do so. He's now head of the Empire Government Strategies and author of the new book, Winning Albany, Untold Stories About the Famous and Not So Famous. Jerry, thanks for joining us.
Nice to be with you.
In the book, you navigate two very large personalities, both the late Ed Koch and Governor Cuomo, who both wanted the same job, and you had to pick sides there, didn't you?
Yeah, well, when I look back at it wasn't a mistake career-wise, but we'll just say it was awfully hard to have to do business with Mario Cuomo once you sided with Ed Koch.
It's funny, Mario Cuomo, we know from a fascinating figure, but if ever there was a perfect nickname, Hamlet on the Hudson, it was him. Was he as indecisive about doing things in the state capitol as he was seemingly, whether he was going to run for president or not, whether he wanted to be a Supreme Court justice? He wanted things both ways all the time. Did you find him that way in Albany?
Well, I was in the room on the second floor on a Thursday night when the plane was out at the airport with the engines running to take him to New Hampshire to file for the presidency.
I knew people, by the way, on the ground in New Hampshire and Manchester waiting for him, and he never got there.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, you know, I guess you want to compare father and son. The father was the philosopher king, right? The son is the street smart guy who plays by completely different rules. But Mario was a philosopher. He was a great speech maker. He couldn't deal with the legislature most of the time because it just wasn't in his style to go one-on-one. So the net result is the Assembly and the Senate would gang up on him. That's not what's going on today with Andrew.
So he didn't have the same bullying kind of style that Andrew Cuomo was reported to have. He would try to bend your ear and talk you into his side?
Well, Mario, his concept was if I work you over for about 2 weeks, you're going to change your position on what I'm interested in. But, he was patient. He never ran out of patience. Andrew is different. He's younger. He's got whatever his goals are. I haven't heard the word bullying. Nagging? Or
I was going to say the word, but go ahead. I'm sorry.
There's a different kind of thing now. The governor's gotten so powerful and has really dominated the airwaves and everything else that there's a fear of intimidating him. There was no fear of intimidating Mario Cuomo.
Hugh Carey, ups and downs certainly that he had, but I found few people who knew him that didn't like him. Do you fit in that category?
Sure. Well, he was one of my favorites. I started with Nelson Rockefeller all the way through to after Carey, Cuomo. Hugh Carey was like the Albany guy. His Washington background was a tremendous help to him to understand the functions of the legislature and how it worked. So Carey sort of eased into the job. He had some of the same troubles that Cuomo had, because the Assembly and the Senate used to gang up on him on many. I mean, we overrode poor Hugh Carey on one budget 128 times. Those were 128 votes, separate votes overriding him. But you know what it is? We'd go over to the mansion. It was after we overrode him, say, let's have dinner. Mario Cuomo wouldn't do that.
Who's the most fun guy to have a drink with?
Well, Hugh Carey is number one as far as having drinks with. Nelson Rockefeller was a fascinating guy. People could have a drink with him. He probably had more parties at the executive mansion for the legislature than any governor I know. I mean, Rockefeller understood the dynamic of, you got to deal with these people. You may not like them, and you may feel you're far more superior than they are, but Nelson Rockefeller understood the rules of the road.
It's funny, in the last couple of years, really, to be fair, since Andrew Cuomo came in, the dysfunction that was always in the same sentence of Albany has gone away to a certain degree. Whatever his style is, whether he's strong arms, and we all got our own stories about Andrew Cuomo, did you encounter the same frustration and distaste for Albany when you were up in the Capital District that we saw, through much of the 2000s here? It got, the Pedro Espada years, you wanted to wash your hands of it and stuff. Was it ever that bad when you were up there?
Well, no, it really wasn't. The new group since the 2000s, it became the Me Too generation in Albany. Everything was about what their needs were and what they thought was the appropriate ethics to function by. The groups between 1966 and 2000, it wasn't about the next 10 minutes. It was always about the next 10 years. It's so much different now. You got a new breed coming in who don't understand the system, don't understand the rules of the road, and that's really the problem.
But you know, Jerry, people were saying you might not have had as many crooks before, but they never passed the budget on time. You guys were the punchline, Albany, that they could never get anything passed on time, right? Why is that? Why was that?
Well, there's a reason why they pass budgets on time now, because when David Paterson was governor, they got a court decision that said that after April 1, the legislature is useless when it comes to the budget. Once the two houses decided what the budget was going to be like before 2000, then that's where the delays always came in. And the only thing that ever made them pass a budget at all was the fact that the state had to go borrow money, and they couldn't do it without an approved budget.
You had any favorite characters that you and Jerry shared stories on?
You know what's funny? I wanted to go back to his first answer, because to know Ed Koch and know Mario Cuomo, those are really two strong personalities.
Very large egos, yeah.
And your first answer really floored me when you said if you sided with Ed Koch, then you couldn't work with Mario Cuomo. Basically, that's what you said?
It was hard, but put it this way, Mario Cuomo held a grudge. That's the best way to describe it.
Right.
But, you know, the answer was that Ed Koch lived in his own world, and he was very decisive and wasn't a great speech maker, but Ed Koch had an agenda, and from time to time that never agreed with Mario Cuomo's agenda.
Now, why is it the mayor of New York City and the governor of New York State traditionally don't have a great relationship? Does it really come down to, I want to be the top dog of the state? Why is that?
Well, just understand this. New York City is the adopted child of the state of New York. The state decides whether it can tax. The state decides the budget for the MTA. The state decides all these different things. So the net result of it is that the city has to beg. And if you look at the mayors we've had in the last 20 years, they're not used to going and beg.
Shelley Silver. Somehow, some way, doesn't matter what's thrown at him, he is always one of the three men in the room, or whatever you want to call him now. Politically, whether people like him or not, he's brilliant as a tactician, isn't he?
Well, he's cultivated something that his predecessors, like Stanley Fink, was another one like that. Warren Anderson in the Senate was another one like that. He listens to his members, gets a consensus from his members, and sticks with his members. And keep in mind, he has patronage power too, which is sort of the glue that keeps it together.
The Lulus and everything else.
Yeah, but
right?
but Shelley, people underestimate him. Okay, he may be a guy who's like from the Lower East Side, but on the other hand, he's very smart. He understands when to shut up and let other people talk, and that's a gift.
I asked you a question I've asked some other folks who've been to Albany and left. Knowing what you know and all the moving parts, if someone very close to you said, I want to run for assemblyman or state senator, would you encourage them or say, run for the hills instead?
No, I would say absolutely, run for a local office. I might say, why don't you run for school board or city council before you decide, to run for the state legislature. But why not? I didn't come from the kind of background where I had no silver spoon in my mouth, and I made the trip, pretty high up.
Yep.
So the answer is, why not? Plus, we really need good people to want to run for office.
This much is very true. Jerry's book again, Winning Albany: Untold Stories About the Famous and Not So Famous. Thank you. When we come back, everyone, comparing a sitting congressman from our area to the crackhead mayor of Toronto, we're going to show you how that ad has many screaming this low even when it comes to political advertising. And Amazon delivering drones, really? Is it a high-tech speedy delivery or just tech turned stupid? We're going to talk about that as the table does the TOT after this.